Welcome to this Thursday's webcast. I'm Rudy Maxa, your genial radio show, in this case, webcast host. I'm a travel journalist, and I forgot to turn on my beauty light, so let me do that. I'll be right back. There we go. It's a little better. It'll reflect in my glasses at times, but I'll try not to lift my head up that high. Maybe I can make this a little tighter there, too. Today's guests, we have in the second half hour, Jonathan Karl, ABC Television's chief White House correspondent. He's also the author of a new book called, Front Row at the Trump Show. It just came out a week ago. Talk to him about that. But because this is generally travel-oriented, this website, or this podcast, webcast, we'll talk about what the Trump presidents. He's traveled with a lot of world leaders, met a lot of world leaders, interviewed a lot, and we'll sort of hear what that is like, so that we will satisfy our travel angle. My first guest coming up in a couple of minutes is a analyst at creditcards.com, and he's really smart about credit cards that can earn you miles and points. In fact, he told me, by talking to him before inviting him on the show, that several of the more expensive credit cards, like this Amex, there's Ted now. Come on in, Ted. Some of the more premium credit cards, like, hi, Ted. This is Ted Rossman. He is.
Hi, Rudy. How are you?
Fine, thanks. He'll join it. He's. I was driving car. He's an analyst at creditcards.com. He knows a whole lot about credit cards. And I was just saying that in talking to Ted before inviting him on the show, he told me that a lot of premium cards, like the Sapphire Reserve card and the American Express Platinum card, have added some extra perks to them that most people don't know about, including me, and I don't know about it. Welcome to Ted. As I said, if you've just tuned in, Ted Rossman is an analyst with creditcards.com, and his specialty is understanding credit cards and which give you the best points, depending on credit card is affiliated with. And he surprised me the other day by telling me that some of the premium cards that cost $550 a year have added perks because they're feeling badly because we can't travel and use many of the perks. We're not going out to restaurants that can use their credit cards, and they would like us not to end our $550 a year deal with them. So they've been very kind to us. Ted, so tell us some of the perks that have been added to cards that we know about.
The Amex Platinum, I think they've been really smart. They've added $20 credits every month now through the end of the year for things like streaming, cell phone plans. That's $320 a year if you max it out from May through December. That goes a long way right there towards offsetting that annual fee. We're also seeing a lot of credit cards upping their grocery rewards. That's something we're seeing from the Chase Sapphire Reserve. Also, a lot of the co-branded cards, companies like Hilton and Marriott and Delta and United, they're all really leaning into this grocery category, which I think is smart because that's where a lot of people are spending these days. But it also creates that loyalty feedback loop of you earn the points now on grocery spending, and then you use them later on for travel. So that could really be valuable for people.
Well, I called about my credit card, my Platinum American Express business card, and they said they'd give me $20 a month toward my cell phone bill. But apparently the $20 streaming services per month is for the personal American Express Platinum, which I do not carry, just as a little footnote. Make sense to you?
It does. Yeah, that's an important clarification there between the consumer and business cards. I do think the broader point, though, is definitely look into your existing cards because they may have changed their structures. And these are probably if you can get that fee lowered or waived, or maybe you can get some bonus points to offset it. It's definitely a good time to ask for those sorts of offers.
Well, what do you call and threaten? First of all, I actually said when I called Amex late in preparation for talking to you, I said, I'm trying to decide whether to drop my $550 a year Amex thing and go over to Chase Sapphire, which I already have, by the way. I thought she'd say, well, Mr. Maxa, because they've said it before, we'd like to offer you 20,000 Amex points if you stick around, blah, 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 blah. She did not. Do you have to go to a special desk? What's it called? Some kind of reconciliation desk or something?
Yeah,
reconsideration.
The retention department is another term I've heard for it. So you can probably try with the frontline customer service rep. I think that is a smart tactic, what you said. Be polite, but also mention that, yeah, it's a competitive market and I am thinking of taking my business elsewhere. I used to love this card. Right now, I'm not getting the value out of it. I think that's all very appropriate. And you may also come in armed with some alternatives, like you did. You mentioned a specific name, the Chase Sapphire Reserve card. If you can say, hey, look, I've seen this other perk offered, or I've seen this lower interest rate, it definitely doesn't hurt to ask. I think a lot of times you will get some sort of break from the company because they don't want to lose you. And right now, it's a tough time for a lot of businesses, including credit cards. They're worried that people may not pay them back. They're worried that people may not re-up their annual fee cards. So if you're a good customer, that you've been with them a while, you pay on time, you have a good credit score, this is definitely some leverage.
Okay. I think I will try that, actually. I think I tell all our guests to always sign out on Chrome, and I'm on Chrome. I think I'm on Chrome with you, and that may be why I'm having some problems with my video, but I'm not going to do that now. I'm just going to ask you, seeing my pretty face is not necessary to enjoy this webcast. Trust me. And I know you can see our guests, so that's good. Okay, so you call up and you say, I'm not using the card the last 3 months, and it's expensive at $550 a year, and I'm thinking of looking elsewhere. And if the person doesn't try to convince you, talk to the people who handle cancellations. What did you call it? What kind of desk?
Retention. Yeah, see if you can get escalated to either the retention department or a supervisor. It's kind of like when you call your cable company and you say, I'm thinking of cutting the cord, or I'm thinking of switching to a competitor. Sometimes then they'll bend over backwards and find a way to sweeten the deal.
Okay. Now the Chase Sapphire card has added a couple things too. What have they added?
They have. Some of this was already planned, and I think it also fits with today's new climate, and some of it is truly new. So a few months ago, they decided to up the annual fee from $450 to $550 a year. They did add some extra perks to make that worth it. They added some enhanced benefits with Lyft, including Lyft Pink membership, which gives you priority access, and some discounts. They also included some perks with DoorDash that included a $60 credit both this year and next. And DoorDash in particular, that really fits today's stay-at-home, order food delivery kind of mantra. But then more recently, they've rescinded that annual fee hike for this year. So now it's back to $450. And they've expanded ways that you can use that $300 a year travel credit. So now you can use that for things like gas and groceries, not just airlines and hotels. They've also enhanced the places where you can use that higher rewards level. So normally you can get a 50% bonus on travel redemptions, basically making your points worth 1.5 cents a piece. And they've expanded that. So now you can use that for a much wider selection of options, including things like groceries, where people are spending a lot of money these days.
Well, how do I do that with groceries? Do I charge the groceries and call them up and say, apply part of my $300 allocation toward that specific charge?
Yeah, that's pretty much how it works. You can also do it online. You make the purchase first and then you cancel it out later. It's similar to what the Capital One Venture card does. They call it purchase eraser, but it's basically a statement credit. So you can use your points to offset those existing purchases. It is a much better deal than traditional cashback redemptions because normally, especially on these higher end travel cards, you're going to get a lower ratio normally for cash back. This is a way, though, to basically get the higher travel type value, but get it in more of a cashback or a statement credit sense. Another thing is you could just bank the points now. So you could realize that this is a great card to use for groceries all of a sudden because they're giving 5 points per dollar. And you don't have to use them right away. You could save them for future travel, either booking through Chase or transferring to partners. I think that's something that is often overlooked, that if you're in a fortunate position now that your finances are doing pretty well, you're starting to think about, hey, I'd love to go on this trip in a few months or next year. It can be a good time to bank those points with your new spending habits and then use them for a great trip later on.
Okay, let's talk about earning points and miles. You've just told us one, which is now that the site's giving these this 5 points per dollar spent instead of $1 per point spent on groceries, for example. What way to maximize some of your points and your miles during this time of COVID-19? What are some other ways that we should be thinking about that now? Shop for a credit card that will do the best for you.
I think it's really important to think about your spending habits. So, what do you spend the most money on? What do you want to get out of your rewards? These are some of the most important questions, and the answers may have changed in the past few months. Look ahead too. So, think not just right now, but how might this change in 3 months or 6 months? Because this should be a medium to longer term kind of pursuit. You want to watch out for overlap. Sometimes people get cards, especially annual fee cards, that do a lot of the same things. So if you have multiple cards that give you a global entry or TSA pre-check fee waiver, it doesn't help you as much. Now, maybe you could use it for a family member's membership or a friend's membership. The grocery example is another good one. Whereas in the past, if you had, let's say, a Marriott card and a Delta card and one of those general purpose travel cards like the Sapphire Reserve, those all did different things: transferable points, hotel points, airline miles. Now, all of a sudden, they're all really morphing into, at least short term, grocery kind of cards. So think about, does it make sense to pay all those annual fees? Could you ask the issuer for a break? Should you maybe reconfigure your strategy moving forward? Because your lifestyle changes for a number of reasons. It could be changes at work or changes with marriage or kids or lifestyle. But right now, spending is a big lifestyle that's changing.
Well, but a lot of us apply for multiple cards because we want to get those 40,000 points or miles right up front for a new card. The question always becomes, how long do you have to hold on to it then?
Right. Yeah, that's an important question for card churners. I would say that you do need to be careful, of course, not applying for too many cards all at once. Like Chase has that 524 rule where they don't want you to have applied for more than 5 cards in the past 24 months. So you do need to be a bit selective about that. Normally we say keep old cards open because it helps your credit score, because of your credit utilization. That's credit you're using divided by your total credit limit. All else being equal, if you have more credit, it's usually a good thing. That sometimes goes out the window when you're paying annual fees because you don't want to pay just for your credit score. You want to think about, am I truly getting value from this card? Good news is that a lot of the value from those annual fee hotel and airline cards are things like free nights, companion tickets, a head start on elite status. Those perks have all been extended out into next year or even into 2022. So, think about, will you use those things at some point? If not, maybe keep the card open, but do what's called a product change and switch to a different card from the same issuer that doesn't charge that annual fee.
Right. Okay. All right. I was not on Chrome. I tell all our guests, you got to come in on Chrome. And of course, I came in on Firefox for some reason. All right. Now, let me see if our attendees are still. Yeah, I didn't lose our guests. Okay, that's always good. Anybody have any questions for Ted before we lose him? Please ask. We got about 6 more minutes with him. If you've just joined us, Ted Rossman is an analyst with creditcard.com. It's a website that will help you choose the right credit card depending on what you want to use your credit card for in terms of gaining points or miles that allow you to apply toward hotel rooms or travel or any other things. Laura has a question. We know we can transfer points from Chase Sapphire to airline partners. Can we do it the other way around?
Interesting question. No, you can't do that. It's really a one-way transfer. That would actually be a creative thing for some of these card companies to think about. But no, right now it's a one-way transfer. It goes from Chase out to the partners. Works the same way with other cards like Citi cards and other issuers. Important distinction there too is you can't reverse it. So like, for example, I have a Citi Premier card and I transferred a bunch of miles to JetBlue for a trip that didn't end up happening. I got the miles back from JetBlue, but they're sitting in my JetBlue account. You can't unwind that.
Right. Michael asks a question. He says, I got a Delta Amex business card last year, attempted to cancel it after 4 months. He got a prorated refund on his annual fee, but Amex threatened to take away the bonus points they gave me. He says they never took them away, but is that common?
It's something buried in the fine print. Really, what they're worried about are card churners, people who are opening and closing cards in short order just to get the points and miles. Oftentimes, you want to wait a bit longer than 4 months to make any changes. Typically, I think a year tends to be the tipping point that, it often makes sense to hold on to the card at least that long so you don't draw their scrutiny.
Right. Okay. And is it a true statement that the best way to gobble up a whole bunch of miles right off the bat is looking for something that's a card that's offering you 50,000 or more miles or points to sign up? Now, you may have to spend a minimum of $3,000 in 3 months or maybe more in some cases, but if you can do it, it's a quick way to pad your account, isn't it?
I agree. Those sign-up bonuses are really lucrative. Sometimes you can get a first-class international ticket basically just from signing up for a new card. That brings us to another recent change in this era of COVID-19. A lot of the big issuers, like American Express was the first to do this, but a number of others have followed. They're giving you more time to earn that bonus. So if you sign up for a card, normally you have 3 months to do the spending to get the bonus. Now, in a lot of cases, it's 6 months. So that helps because a lot of people are spending less, they're spending differently. I thought that was really a consumer-friendly change.
It is. Lena says, I got a Capital CSP card, Capital maybe card?
Chase Sapphire Preferred.
Chase Sapphire Preferred 4 years ago. Can I cancel or downgrade it and then reapply for the same card for a sign-up bonus again?
Usually they're not going to let you double dip. Normally these issuers are aware and it's more of a lifetime ban on getting multiple bonuses for the same card.
Got to wait a few years maybe. Larry asks, when do you recommend asking for a retention offer? I have a Delta Reserve Personal Amex that renews this month and another Business Reserve card that renews in November.
Typically, this is a good time to do it because you do have some leverage, like I said, with the pandemic. It also sounds like your renewals are coming up, so that makes it a good time. Although you're not totally out of luck if you wait a little bit or if somebody else watching this thinks, well, I'm more mid-cycle. There are prorated refunds if you are to cancel a card mid-year or better yet downgrade so you can mitigate that credit score impact. But I would say ideally, if you can pick, do it right before your renewal, probably for maximum effect.
Okay. Well, I think this is all just great advice. What credit cards do you carry, Ted? What does the bus driver or what does the taxi driver do when he's driving on vacation? What cards do you carry?
I have to say I'm a little bit atypical here because I've traditionally been more of a cashback card holder. I certainly travel, but I'm not a super traveler like so many people probably watching this. I have a young child, and normally now I'm working from home, but normally I'm more of an office kind of worker that takes a couple family trips a year, but not a total jet setter. So I tend to focus more on cash back, although I would say that over the past year, I've dabbled more in some of the mid-tier travel rewards cards, things like City Premier, Capital One Venture. It ended up being kind of an ironic, unfortunate time to start dabbling in those travel cards because
you got the bonus miles. You got the bonus. You got the bonus miles.
I did get the bonus miles. Yeah, that's true. Part of the reason I signed up for those cards was I had some big expenses coming up. One was a family trip to Disney World, so we defrayed some of that with a new card. And then we also did some home renovations and we defrayed some of those with a new card. So it made it a good time to sign up. I'm still kind of thinking about next year, but I am kind of a cashback loyalist. I know it sounds surprising.
So you don't have any of the $550 Amex Platinums or any of those?
I don't. It's funny. I was trying to sell my wife on one of them actually. And she said, you know what, especially with a 5-year-old, even though the airport lounge is fancy, we'd rather minimize our time in the airport. So I got to keep working on her.
Ted Rossman, thank you so much for joining us. If you would like to know more about credit cards and my favorite lifestyle, is creditcards.com. Very easy to remember. And Ted, thank you for putting up with my technical difficulties at the moment. I see Jonathan Karl has entered the room, so we'll say goodbye to you, and nice of you to spend part of your day with us. Thank you.
I enjoyed it. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Ted. Bye-bye. Jonathan Karl is over in my other face. Jonathan, have you hit that camera thing up in the left? It looks like a locomotive front coming at you up in the upper left-hand corner. There you go. Jonathan Karl, welcome to the show. I feel like it's a show. This is, I've told people at the beginning, but they may have just tuned in. Jonathan Karl is the chief White House correspondent for ABC News. He's also president of the White House Correspondents Association. He can tell us what that does. And he's the author of a new book, which I just realized, even though I couldn't get to the store to buy it, I'm reading it on my iPad, so I can actually show the cover here. It is called Front Row at the Trump Show. Sorry about the light. I don't know how to get that out of there, but you got it. By Jonathan Karl. And Jonathan is sort of, Jonathan is sort of famous for asking tough questions. He has his entire career. He joined ABC, let me read the bio, in 2003 as a senior foreign correspondent covering the State Department. Traveled around the world with Secretaries of State Condoleezza Rice and Colin Powell. He was named in 2005 the senior national security correspondent, reported on the situation in Darfur and Sudan, visited the war-torn country 3 times, won an Emmy for that. More important, he's interviewed Elton John, George Clooney, and the Dalai Lama, among others. In March of 27th of this year, he asked Donald Trump if he could guarantee every American would need a ventilator who needed one to get on one. And Trump retorted to him, "Look, don't be a cutie pie, okay?" And there was another episode where he asked a question. And do we have that clip, Tommy? I don't know. I have to look at my text. If you have it, go ahead and run it, Tommy. Otherwise, I'll describe it, what he said. And then we'll let Karl talk for a minute. Jonathan talk for a minute, excuse me. Anyway, if we don't have the clip, you can find it at YouTube by typing in Jonathan Karl and Donald Trump.
There it is.
There it is.
Oh, you didn't tell me that. Oh, I see. You didn't tell me that, John. You didn't tell me that. Did serve with the previous.
He's thinking what he's going to say, I think, right there.
The video might have frozen up. Let's see if it runs again.
Oh, you didn't tell me that. Oh, you didn't tell me. You didn't tell me that. Did serve in the previous administration. You mean the Obama administration? Thank you for telling me that. See, there's a typical fake news deal. Now, look.
I told you when she was
You're a third-rate reporter, and what you just said is a disgrace, okay? You asked me, you said, sir, just got to prove it. Take a look at what you said. Now, I said, when did this person, how long in government? Well, it was appointed in the Obama administration. Thank you very much, John. Thank you very much. You will never make it. Go ahead.
Well, you may not have heard it because I think Jonathan's mic wasn't mute, so you're getting a little reverb on that. But he basically called Jonathan a third-rate reporter. I didn't have time in the bio to list all the awards he's won. So he also said you couldn't make it, didn't he? All right. This is not a political show, Jonathan. I don't want to irritate lovers. I don't want to irritate non-Trump lovers. It's a travel show, but we had to establish who you are. And of course, it's always interesting when you're called by the president to be a third-rate guy. You're never going to make it. And so, I wanted to talk about traveling. How many presidents have you traveled with?
I have traveled with 3 presidents. The fourth, I've covered 4. I've traveled with 3. The fourth is Bill Clinton. I didn't actually travel with him, but I traveled many, many times with his vice president, who you may remember was a guy by the name of Al Gore.
Right.
So I traveled with him quite a bit.
And I think people imagine when you say traveling with the president, you're all on one big plane and everybody's, talking and jolly. In fact, that's not quite how it works all the time. Can you describe what a typical presidential trip means to you and your colleagues as White House reporters?
Well, there are a couple of different ways that it can happen. And I've traveled all over the world with presidents and part of the traveling press. By the way, I should mention on the third-rate reporter, before I get to answer your question, I've had many interactions like him. He's called me many different names, but he also routinely compliments me in public, and it
he
really
calls on you. I wouldn't call on you if I didn't like you. You know?
Right. And just about a week after that episode, he saw me. He was at an event in the state dining room in the residence of the White House. And I was asking him some questions, which he was answering. And then at one point he said, "By the way, I liked your book. It was a lot better than I thought it would be." And, he started talking in the middle of this event in front of all the cameras and all the senior economic advisors, all these member of Congress. Started talking. Anyway, so it's you never know what day it's going to be, what you're going to get. So first of all, on Air Force One, there is a press cabin that has 13 seats. And obviously, when you see the president, there are many more than 13 reporters and cameramen, camera women, techs, all that. They travel. So 13 seats are all that we have on Air Force One. So that's a pool, and it rotates. And there are a certain number of seats, 4 seats for still photographers. There's a network crew and editorial seat. That would be me, a correspondent, a camera operator, a sound tech. There are 3 wire reporters. There's a rotating pool, newspaper reporters. So, we all take turns. And when you're on Air Force One, by being pooled, it means your information is pooled. So if I'm traveling on Air Force One, it means I'm actually working not for ABC News. I'm working for all 5 of the major networks. And my job is to file reports that go to all of them. Now, they'll only air in terms of me on ABC unless it's something huge. But my written reports go to everybody, and the video gets shared with everybody. So when you're traveling on Air Force One, it may not surprise you, Rudy, but we're in the back of the plane.
I'm shocked.
But it's nice. It's kind of like domestic business class seating, and the stewards are Air Force Air Force personnel. And you get treated great. It's always I've traveled in Air Force One all over the world many times, and I'm always a little bit in awe when I walk in that in that plane. Now, of course, we also walk in the back. We don't go up the big grand stairway that the president goes in. We walk in the back where the luggage goes, practically. But and the president on those trips will often come back and speak. Sometimes it's on the record, sometimes it's off the record. If he's really upset with everybody, he won't come back at all. But you're a little bit on edge when you're on Air Force One, because again you are working for. In my case, I'm working for all 5 of those television networks. So I can't really sleep very soundly because maybe the president's going to come back and suddenly start talking. I need to be up and on my game.
Who decides what 13 reporters get to fly on Air Force One at any given time?
It's actually the White House Correspondents Association by tradition.
You're the president.
And by the way, reporters have been traveling on the president's plane since Kennedy as a regular matter, and did so also with Eisenhower. But as a formalized way, there's been a contingent of reporters traveling. And I got to tell you, one of the amazing things about Air Force One is the plane is never late, Rudy, and it is never early. Because they don't want the president to land. Oh, hey, we got here 10 minutes early. Now, cool your jets while you wait for them to get ready to welcome you. It lands exactly on time. And you can time it with your watch. If it says you're going to land at 3:30, at 3:29:59, the wheels are touching down. They are exactly on time. Of course, it helps if you can freeze all, clear all the airspace around you.
That's easier to approach. Well, but for the rest of the press, is there another plane following? And is that a commercial plane, a chartered plane?
Yes, and this has changed over time since I've been covering the White House. But on the major international trips, there would be another charter plane, and we always go around and get bids from different charter companies. So it's not always the same plane or the same company or the same folks. But the press plane goes out ahead of the president, gets there so you're in time to cover when he lands, and leaves after he has left, so you can be there for the departure. And over the years, I've seen some pretty wild. I mean, the press plane can be a little unruly. Because there's like no real rules apply. That whole like seatbelts and sitting down, and I mean, it can get, especially if it's at the end, the run home or the work is all done, and there's plenty to drink on that plane. And what's
alcohol
that? Yes. And
well, now two related questions: who pays for your seats on Air Force One, or does anybody? And who pays for that chartered plane, and who arranges it?
So on Air Force One, the networks pay. So it's shared by, well, I mean, basically we would pay if I'm ABC, but we know that the next time, NBC is going to go and they're going to pay. So everybody ends up paying the same amount. And the way they figure out, because you're wondering, well, how do you charge that? So the way they do it is they figure out a business class airfare on the same route at that time. So they'll do a check and then they'll bill you based on that. And then when the charters, and as you know, the news business has gone through some challenging economic times. So the charters, what has happened is sometimes they don't have them at all because we get a price, we get a bid on a thing, we figure out how much it's going to cost for every news organization that's traveling. And the more news organizations that are going to be on the plane, obviously the less per person the cost is. And we get that. And then what happens is invariably, especially the networks who send a lot of personnel, because it'd be maybe one or two correspondents, several producers, all the camera and sound techs. And sometimes you find out it's cheaper to fly, business class commercially, and you just get there early and leave later. And you don't necessarily need to be on the plane that's following the White House. And then if one group doesn't take the charter, then it gets more expensive for those there. So on some of these trips, there ends up not being a charter. Where you really need to have a charter is when the president is doing, say, like a tour, and I've been on several of these, including with Donald Trump, where he's doing 4 or 5 countries, say, in Asia, and it's and the stops can be pretty quick. I mean, we need to be able to have the grid, all the grids, we can go quickly, land, get through, pre-cleared on all our passport and all of that. So sometimes that's where we absolutely have to have a charter. But on some of these where he's going to 1 or 2 countries, it's become more and more frequent that we just fly commercially on our own.
And how do I ask this? I mean, more and more people at least in the travel journalism world that I now occupy, I used to be in sort of your world, but there are a lot of influencers, bloggers, and so on, and Instagram posters who have 1 million followers and so on.
Yep.
Do they make an appearance on either of the planes, and do they have the money to do that, or is it really conventional press on both planes?
Well, it's conventional press, but of course the definition of conventional press has changed in recent years, and you do have, but it's news. It would be people that are covering the president, not so much influencers or
right.
But I mean, we've got this proliferation of digital news outlets, including partisan press, liberal press, conservative press, that will often make an appearance not on Air Force One. Now, Air Force One, like I said, the White House Correspondents Association, which I now run, we have a very, we have a rotation, and you've got to be part of that. There's a whole formula for how you get involved in that, and we have those pool print seats that are the major newspapers and online news outlets, and they have to be professional reporters who cover the White House, who can pull the information and share it for everybody, because you're suddenly when you're in that seat, especially the newspaper seat, so you're all of a sudden you are now a reporter for the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal, the LA Times, and everybody. So you have to be you have to be good. You have to know what you're doing.
Right. We have a question from Mark Wexler, who is a documentary maker, and I think he's one of the few cameramen who's been allowed to actually film inside the Air Force One. He did it years ago for National Geographic Television, as I recall, and he's watching right now, and he asks the question, has Donald Trump made any modifications to Air Force One that you know of?
No, but he has overseen the development of a new Air Force One, which is going to be reintroduced. I don't know the exact timing, but it's in production. And if you go into the Oval Office right now, Rudy, I wouldn't suggest it without an invite, but if you go in, there is a model of this new Air Force One that is right there on the coffee table by those yellow couches that you often see when Melania is sitting there or his aides are sitting there when he's meeting with a foreign leader. Right there, Obama used to have a bowl of apples. Reagan, I guess, had his jelly beans, but in terms of Donald Trump, he's very proud of this remodel of Air Force One, which the Air Force was doing. They've had a plan. I mean, those planes are 30 some years old now.
What kind of aircraft is it?
It's a 747. Oh, the new one?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't want to give you a wrong answer. I forget which. It's obviously a Boeing. It's similar to the one they have, but it's a souped up.
Don't you?
What's that?
I doubt it's a 747.
No, that's where the old one is. I'm saying that's what the old one is.
Yeah, the old one. Yeah, right.
Yeah. No, I know. I know the new one is not. That's what the old one is. And I just forget what the what they brought up for the new one. But he's changed his what he has done to this is he has changed the color scheme, because it was Jackie Kennedy that came up with the current color scheme of Air Force One, and he thought it didn't project enough strength, et cetera, and so it's a different color scheme, and he's extremely proud of it.
Michael says, I hope it's not black like the Trump jet was, number one. And then Mark,
well, it's got big gold letterings, United States of America, Trump. And I don't know if Biden's going to keep that. I'm not sure, but
well, Mark Wexler and another guy, Tommy Danielson, who know a lot about planes, say it's a 747-8I.
Okay.
So it is a 747. Will be the new Air Force One. And also one, I think, not a misconception, but if someone was to think about it, people think there's this one plane called Air Force One. And in fact, any plane the president's on Air Force One. But how many of the Air Force, the big 747s that are flown overseas and so on, how many of those are there?
Well, he's got two that are operational right now. So it can be one or the other, and sometimes they will fly both and have a decoy situation. But they are, and I went and did a whole thing where I did a special on Air Force One, and went and flew with the crew, did a whole thing inside and out on the 747 on the big plane. And I believe, if I have this, it's been a while since I did this. Obama was still president, but the one that he was using was built in 1991.
Wow, that's old.
And there was another one at the point that it was actually being renovated. So they've been and they keep these planes so incredibly clean and ready. It is, and the Air Force this is the crown jewel of the Air Force, and they take such pride in how that plane operates and how kept up it is. But you're right. Every plane that he is on is Air Force One, and he does fly. There is a smaller plane. You're going to ask me which one it is. I'm not enough of an aircraft guy to tell you, but there's a smaller version, which, for instance, the president will be taking to Maine. He's going to Maine tomorrow, and then to Bedminster for the weekend, and he will be taking the smaller version because of the airport he's going to. So this also becomes a question for us, and the reason why I'm up to speed on which plane he's taking is
it's a 757. I've been informed,
Okay,
also,
great. I love that we have people that know travel on this show. So that is fantastic.
That's one fun thing about a webcast. If this was a regular TV interview, nobody can call in and say, by the way, your brother is watching, Alan Karl, who's the guy, crazy guy who rides motorcycles all over the world. He confirms that the one you fly on generally is a 747. So just talk to your brother anytime you want to know some information.
Okay, good. Yeah, he doesn't fly much. He's on a motorcycle. What does he know about planes?
But two questions. I presume on the 757 that he's taking on the shorter trip to Maine tomorrow. I presume it has all the electronic stuff that the president needs for quick communications to launch rockets and all the bells and whistles.
Well, I can tell you one thing it doesn't. One thing it does not have is it does not have an escape pod, unfortunately. So if you've seen the movie Air Force One, I have confirmed that does not exist. The escape pod for the president. But it's got all the communications ability for him to have secure classified communications. It's a smaller plane, which means fewer staff can go, and there's always a question of how much press can go. As I told you, we have 13 seats on the 747. I can tell you on the 757 this weekend we will have the full 13-seat contingent, which is a little tricky because we're also trying to be a little more socially distant in this COVID-19 era. But we will all get tested before we get on the plane.
Are you going?
I am not going on this trip. ABC is, but I am not. ABC is pulled, but I'm not going to be traveling on this one.
And Mark Wexler, the documentarian, points out that the guy with the football, the box with the nuclear codes, is always there no matter what plane it is.
Absolutely, 100%. He's always there. Yes.
Well, how's the food on those on these flights? I mean, do they do anything special, or is it airline food?
I really like. I shouldn't say this because but I really like the food on Air Force One. They do. And as I said, the Air Force takes great pride in this every aspect of this plane. I mentioned to you, never early, never late, always. Every part of this plane is perfectly clean. And the food is fantastic. The presentation is great because we're getting the same, And by the way, the good thing is because we're so far in the back, we're right by where they're making the food. So they didn't bring it out. But I remember the first time I traveled on Air Force Two with Gore, which is again the same. It's the same, the same group of people that work on the planes. I was just so impressed. First of all, got a great beer. I think it was like a Sam Adams or something, and Ben and Jerry's ice cream on Air Force Two. I was like, this is great. I'm all in.
And how many are these? You said they're all Air Force stewards on the plane. How many are there? I mean, is it overstaffed to make sure everybody gets everything all the time? It is not overstaffed. It is not overstaffed, but the people on the plane work extremely efficiently and quickly. Are there movies?
There are definitely movies, and you can, but it's one screen for the press cabin, so we only have one screen. But on the domestic trips, it is usually it's television. It's a news channel, and it's often Fox News when under this president is playing on throughout the plane, and it wasn't Fox News when Obama was president. I don't know what happened to the system, but
well, let's plug your book a little bit. Let me show the cover again. It just came out. You must be a very proud young man.
Yes,
it is called Front Row at the Trump Show, and it's a book of. I have just started reading it because I just got it on my iPad. Let's see. Let me see if I can maximize my photograph here. There's a way to do it.
I can try to do it this way.
There you go. Good. Better than I got it on the iPad here. So this, how long? So this is only really about the Trump years, right?
Well, it's interesting you say that because I've known Donald Trump for now 26 years.
That's right. You called him old once in New York.
Yes. So we do go back to some of those days. I'm not just saying this because I hope everybody listening reads the book, because I really do, because I'm extremely proud of it. I think it's the most important work I have done as a journalist. It's certainly one that I put heart and soul into working on it for almost entirety of last year. Look, I have covered 4 presidents in the White House. I've covered 14. I think I'm on 14 press secretaries now, which gives me a unique vantage point because not many people. I mean, maybe I'm getting old, but I've had a unique experience in terms of comparing the presidents, and I have this, by a bizarre coincidence, have this relationship with Donald Trump, which goes back to 1994, and I wrote this book because I thought I had a hell of a story to tell. This is not a political book in the sense of I want to tell people how awful Trump is and how he's destroying the world or how great he is because he's like, I let you make up your own mind what you think of Donald Trump.
Well, there are a lot of generals standing in line to do that right now. So
yeah, there are plenty of people out there. That's fine, and you will have plenty of ammunition in this book to make your case. But I don't beat it over your head of the opinion. I wanted to tell the story because this is truly, for better or for worse, and there are a lot of very strong opinions on which this is a president unlike any we have ever seen, and I have had a vantage point on him that I don't think any White House reporter has ever had on a president. And I've been keeping notes. I've been keeping a detailed journal. I've been talking to people as I've gone through one of the craziest news environments that we have ever seen these past 3.5 years, really the past 4.5 years, because I would include the campaign on this. And I wanted to make sense of it all. And I had material I could never have said in my day-to-day reporting just because there's too much going on to tell this story. And so you said, so a lot of it, basically a third of the book is before he gets to the White House. A third of the book is the incredibly tumultuous period. And every chapter, I did not write a single chapter where I didn't think I had something new to say.
Wow.
It's either brand new reporting. So I don't go through, there's been so much written on Donald Trump. I only wanted to present where I had something that people didn't know, or an experience that people had not heard about, a story that people did not know. And then so a third of it is that period when he first gets into the White House. And by the way, I was one of the very first people in the Trump White House because Rudy, you talk about travel. I was on a flatbed truck in front of the presidential limousine as it came down Pennsylvania Avenue after he was sworn in as president and on the way to the White House. So I actually got to the White House at the same time as Donald Trump did. And I had done that twice before, once with Barack Obama and once with George W. Bush, because they have these flatbed trucks. Each network gets to have a correspondent out so you can be part of the, witness this historic ride and all of that. And let me tell you, I mean, so I write about that in the context of those other experiences with Bush and Obama. So I was there in the beginning. I was there in the Oval Office the day that he met Barack Obama for the first time, 2 days after the 2016 presidential election. And then I've had all these experiences with him where he has either called me up to yell about some story or summoned me to the Oval Office, many of which stories that I had never told before. And so that's why I wrote the book. And I was really worried about how I was going to end it and what was going to be happening when it came out. And let me tell you, honestly, it came out as the coronavirus crisis was hitting, and it could not be more relevant to what we have seen in his style and what he has done and the way he has used his platform during this crisis. And now I think one of the most important chapters in the book is about Charlottesville, which is highly, highly relevant to what we see playing out right now.
Jonathan Karl's book is called Front Row at the Trump Show. It's just come out. I would highly recommend it. I just started reading it, and it's fascinating to me. Even though I'm living in St. Paul, Minnesota, I did spend 30 years as a journalist in D.C., so maybe I'm a little biased, but I'm enjoying it very much, and I would commend it to you. And as I said, this is not a political show, so I'm not asking questions about what Jonathan thinks about Trump. I want to talk about that anyway. But I thank you very much for talking about traveling with presidents, which is what I did invite you on for. Jonathan, good luck with the book. we'll be watching for you and see if you can rise above that third-rate rating here. Maybe become a second-rate reporter. If you try.
Maybe I'll get up there. Maybe I can do this. Hey, Rudy, thank you for having me on, and I've been a big fan of yours for a long time. So it's a real honor to be on with you.
Well, it's an honor for you to say that. Thank you, Jonathan. And I want to thank all our guests as always. And I want to thank all of you who tune in. Tell your friends you can see this on YouTube or send it along to other friends at YouTube who you think might be as interested as I was in what Jonathan had to say. And meanwhile, we'll see you next Thursday. Can't wait. Thank you, Jonathan. Take care.
Take care. Bye-bye.
And goodbye to you all. Again, if you go to YouTube and just type in I Was Thinking or Rudy Maxa and Jonathan Karl, this, by about tomorrow, this video will come up, and you can certainly forward it to friends who you might think might be interested in it. We always encourage you to check out Facebook, because if we get enough hours, someday I can monetize the darn thing and make $1 for doing this. And by then I'll have it right. Take care. See you next week. Bye-bye.